Kyle, today on the podcast, I wanted to go into a little bit deeper about what you talked about in our weekly meeting, which was this new tax bill coming up. Now, you titled the meeting One Big Beautiful Bill. Is that right?
That's the name of the tax bill that is on the table currently, yes.
I didn't know that was the name. I thought you
thought
just...
that was the name of my meeting?
Yeah, I was like, that's the dumbest name.
That's how I describe myself, as like one big beautiful guy. So.
Okay. Well, you should change your name to Bill, and then we'll call it even. Yeah, I was like, that's a dumb name for a meeting. And you're like, that's the name of the bill. I'm like, oh. So anyways, there's lots in it. I think you said there's over 1,100 pages.
Yes.
But what's really cool is there's some strategy that you've looked at. If this passes as we see fit, there's a strategy that you call buy, die, depreciate, repreciate.
Yeah, you nailed it. Just like, boom, right there.
Yeah,
hit the nail on the head.
Second process is die. It's not that. But anyways, I want you
Should
to
we die first and then buy?
Die, buy, depreciate, repreciate.
I think, you're totally nailing it.
This is why I am not hosting. I'm just asking the question, and he's going to talk. So, Kyle, why don't you break it down for us? And at the end of the podcast, we're not doing the Whissel Widget of the week anymore. I'm going to have you do a quick fire question about permits.
Quick fire or rapid fire. Yeah.
I don't like this game. Hey, Kyle, I don't...
Well, let's jump in, guys. We're going to talk about this strategy today that I'm obsessed with. The original version of this was just buy, borrow, die, but I think there's a little more to it, especially when we focus on real estate. It's buy, depreciate, borrow, or exchange, and then die. So we're going to dive into that today. My name is Kyle Whissel. Welcome to the Whissel Way podcast.
I'm Bryan Koci.
The goal of the show is to give you the tools, techniques, and tactics. Go out there and crush it in your business. The way that we like to do that is to answer the questions that you have for us. So if you ever have a question you want us to answer on the show, you can always go to thewhisselway.com. thewhisselway.com. Ask us questions on there. Subscribe to the podcast or YouTube channel. Join our private Facebook group where we share some tips and tricks. Get on our email newsletter list or join our referral network. I think we're sending out like 5 to 10 referrals a week. So I'd love to have great agents all around the country to send those referrals out to. And lastly, if you're looking to level up your content creation game, audio, video, social, the whole nine, all of that is at thewhisselway.com. All right, let's roll.
So this strategy isn't a new strategy. This is something that I know you've taken advantage of when you bought this building, but then the cool strategy that you were really excited about got less and less cool each year. And now it's getting very cool again.
Yes.
See, I'm basically an accountant with these fancy words like
So yeah,
cool.
if you guys if anything in here is incorrect or wrong, Bryan is who you sue, okay? That's who you're going to sue. Because Bryan just said he's an accountant.
My email is Kyle at...
Yeah, so let's jump into this today. First, this one big beautiful bill. I think we don't always time and date stamp these things, but we're recording this. It's Thursday, May 29th right now. So the current state of this one big beautiful bill, this was introduced and it was negotiated and passed through the House of Representatives. Next, it needs to be renegotiated and go through the Senate. And then once the Senate signs off on it, then it'll go to the president for him to review and sign off. So the current version that's on the table as of Thursday, March 29th is what we'll talk about today. Could it change from now? Will this thing even get approved? If it gets approved, will all the things we talk about today be included in the final bill? Nobody knows that for sure, but we feel pretty darn optimistic that all the components of this will stay intact. So first component of this, go buy freaking property. And so most of you guys that are watching this, you're in the real estate industry. A lot of you are real estate agents. Maybe you're in the mortgage industry. But go buy some freaking property. Whether that's primary residence, investment property, I don't care. Just go buy property. You can buy property with no money down. This exists. Even investment property. You can buy personal residence with no money down using something like a VA loan, a USDA loan, or whatnot. But also, you could go out there and maybe you find a seller who's willing to carry and be the bank on a loan. So seller financing or seller carryback if you prefer. You could go out there and maybe you can find an assumable loan that could be little to no money down. And that works whether it's a primary residence or as an investment property. So there's opportunities to get out there and buy with little to no money down, whether it's on the primary side or the investment side. That's one of the beauties of real estate is we get to use this magical thing called leverage, right? It's a lot harder with other investments to apply the same type of leverage that we can apply in real estate. So part one of the whole buy, depreciate, borrow, or exchange, and then die strategy is let's go buy. So take advantage of that. Right now, outside of all your traditional means, the things that are working for a lot of people is, again, buying property subject to. If you want to learn more about subject to financing, there's nobody better than Pace Morby, Pacemorby. Out of Arizona. Guy's amazing. He's spoken for our group Fast Forward, and saw him speak at one of our EXP events recently. He's the guy if you really want to learn this subject to stuff. Also, seller financing. Hopefully you understand the basics of seller financing. It's the same as any other deal, except the difference is the seller is the bank. I'm actually bought a property not too long ago, got seller financing on it, got it at a below market rate, paid the seller a little bit of a premium, but I was able to get it with no money out of pocket and get it at a much better rate than if I were to go to a lender. So there's just some great opportunities out there. So make sure you guys are doing your research, understanding seller financing, or also known as seller carrybacks, and understand subject to financing and assumables. Potentially you could assume a loan. FHA loans, VA loans, USDA loans are all assumable. And then there's other loans out there that could potentially be assumable as well. Like the loan on my house is assumable. If any of you guys want to pay me like a stupid price for my house, I'll sell you my house. You could assume my mortgage, 2.0%. So
$80.
Yeah. All right, we'll start the bidding at 80.
So, okay, you buy a property. Next, and then what's really interesting to me about this is step 2 is depreciate. And usually you hear this word in a very negative connotation. You buy a house or you buy a car, as soon as you drive off the lot, it depreciates 20%. This doesn't sound like a good thing to me.
Well, when you depreciate for tax purposes, it's a beautiful thing.
Oh.
It's one big beautiful thing when you depreciate for tax purposes. So, depreciation. I'm going to give you the short version of this. The traditional way to depreciate a piece of real estate is you take the overall purchase price of the property, you separate out the real property and the land. So let's assume you bought something for $375,000, and we attribute $100,000 of that to the land. That means the remaining value of the real property is $275,000. And now for residential property, you take the value of the real property divided by 27.5. Why? Because somebody sometime in the past decided that was the economic useful life of residential property at 27.5. So you take that $275,000 divided by 27.5. That number is $10,000. Now you get a $10,000 write-off every single year for the next 27.5 years. Depending on where your tax bracket is, what state you're in, I don't know, most of you guys are probably in the 30 to 40% tax bracket. So a $10,000 write-off is probably saving you like $3,000 or $4,000 every year, just via that depreciation. So that's the traditional way depreciation has always been done. They call that straight line depreciation because it's the exact same amount you're writing off every single year for the next 27.5 years. Then came what's called a cost segregation study. That's where they now break down all the components of the property into pieces and figure out, are these components, do they fit into a 5-year useful lifespan, a 15-year, a 27.5-year, or are they land? So now we're breaking into 4 buckets instead of just 2. So they look at things, 5-year things would probably be like carpet, for example. That's going to be something that's in your 5-year bucket. Your 15-year bucket, that might be, I'm trying to remember, was 15-year.
Like with AC?
Fencing, okay. Air conditioning. Those are like 15-year things. Then your 27.5-year things are going to be like the foundation, the roof, right? Things that have a longer economic lifespan on those.
Electrical and plumbing, probably?
Electrical plumbing typically fall in the 27.5-year. So you get this cost segregation study. What does it cost you? $1,000 to $10,000, depending on the size of the property, residential, commercial. Do they do a desktop version? Do they physically come to the property? But you're going to pay. Now they're going to break your property into 4 pieces: 5-year, 15-year, 27.5-year, and then land. So now they're going to break out all those components, and anything that's in that 5-year bucket, now instead of having to stretch it over 27.5 years, if it's in the 5-year bucket, you get to write it off over the first 5 years. So you get to write a lot off. Anything that falls in that 15-year bucket, you write it off over the first 15 years, and then you have the 27.5-year bucket, so you stretch it out. So what that cost segregation does is allows you to front load a lot of that to where the first 5 years you're getting a ton of write-off, far more than the $10,000. Then even for the next 15 years, it's still higher. And then the last, 12.5 years, it'll be much lower than 10,000. But right, if we can get more write-off now than later, we want that. So that cost segregation helps you front load a lot of it, as opposed to spreading it out equally over 27.5 years.
Do we want to front load it because we plan to sell with it before the 27.5 years? Why do we want to front load it?
Because we want to save the money now. The present value of cash is so much higher. So I'd rather get more write-off today. That $10,000 write-off today is a lot more valuable than a $10,000 write-off is going to be 25 years from now. So we want to front load as much of that write-off now because the present value of cash is so much higher. And so if I can get more write-off now, that means I have to pay less taxes. If I pay less taxes, that means I have more money that I can go buy more investments with now. So I'd rather save that money now so I can go buy more investments and help it grow.
That makes a lot of sense.
That makes sense? Cool. So then you had something called bonus depreciation, which was part of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Acts of 2017. What that did is that now said anything that fit in that first less than 20 years, so basically your 5 and 15-year buckets, anything that fit in those 5 and 15-year buckets, instead of spreading it out over 5 and 15 years, you just got to, boom, write it all off in year one, 100% of it. Crazy, right? And that ran through 2022. So any property that was bought from 2018 to 2022, you were able to take 100% of what was either in that 5 and 15-year bucket and write that off in year one. I bought a property in Nashville in 2021. I got a $156,000 write-off because that's how much was in that 5 and 15-year bucket. So I have a short-term rental out there and $156,000 write-off. That's crazy in the first year, right? So instead of having to stretch this thing out over 27 and a half, I got $156,000 in year one. And then I still got write-offs for the next 26 and a half years, but it allowed me to front load that really, really heavily. Now, this Tax Cut and Jobs Act has a little bit of a taper on that. So after 22, it dropped by 20%. So in 23, you can only write off 80% of what fit in those two buckets. 24, it went to 60%. 25, it's 40% until this thing phases out. The one big beautiful bill that Brian loves so much brings it back to 100% through 2027. So it goes from inauguration day of 2025 through 2027. So this is actually retroactive. If you bought a property in February of 2025, you could take advantage of 100%.
Or if your client bought a property in February of 2025, right?
Correct. Investment property. So depreciation, just to make sure we're clear, depreciation is only on investment property, not on primary residence.
Good.
And then the other thing to make sure we're clear on depreciation is that if it is me, as a real estate professional, there's a bunch of questions. You can go do the research on this to make sure you qualify as a material participant in the property. So if you're a real estate professional and you qualify as a material participant in the property, that $156,000 write-off I had on that Nashville property, that allowed me to not only cancel out all of the rental income that I received on that property, which is known as passive income, but there was more than enough write-offs that I also was able to cancel out active income, or like my commission income. So because I'm a real estate professional and I materially participate in that property, I'm able to take that $156,000, wipe out all of the passive income I received from the property, and whatever was left over, wipe out my ordinary income as well. If somebody is not a real estate professional, they do not materially participate, then they can only wipe out the passive income. So if you had, let's say at the end of the day, you had $50,000 in passive income, but you got a $156,000 write-off, you can only wipe out that $50,000 passive income. The one loophole to that is what's called the short-term rental loophole. So if somebody's not a real estate professional, but they do materially participate, they could do it if and only if it's a short-term rental with an average stay of 7 days or less. So if it was like an apartment building and you rented it out to a bunch of long-term tenants, it would not work. But if it was a short-term rental, then you could not only wipe out the passive income, but also the ordinary or active income as well. So you don't have to be a real estate professional to use that short-term rental loophole.
Awesome. That's easy.
So this is the way that myself and a whole bunch of other people wipe out a significant percentage of their income is by utilizing depreciation.
See, I wipe out a significant portion of my income through Amazon. So that's basically the same. That's where I get these.
So does my wife. Yeah, me and my wife have something in common.
These shirts?
Yeah.
Dude, I think she would kill me if I said that. I'm sorry. She doesn't wear these shirts. Okay, so
I wish she wore cheap shirts like that.
BDBD, buy, depreciate, borrow, die.
Yeah, so then the next step of this is borrow or exchange. So one of the things I'm big on is every year that you hold on to a property, if you continue to hold it, you're effectively stating that I like this property so much, I'm choosing to keep it, which means you're basically rebuying your property every year. And you should look at your portfolio that way on an annual basis. If I had the opportunity to buy this property again today, would I do it or not? If the answer is not, then exchange the freaking property and get into a better property. And according to the One Big Beautiful Bill, there's no changes to the 1031 laws. So there was some talk of that pre-election about potentially having some changes to the 1031 exchange. There's no provisions that I was able to find in the One Big Beautiful Bill that would change that. So your 1031 stays completely intact. So if you do own a property, which that Nashville house that I mentioned to you, I owned a piece of shit condo here in San Diego, a little 1-bedroom in a rough neighborhood. I didn't want to hold that thing anymore. So I chose to sell that and then exchange and then roll the proceeds into the short-term rental in Nashville.
Is that the one I bought? I'm living in? A piece of shit condo?
Nope, this is way more shitty. So for me, I analyzed my portfolio, said I don't want to hold this anymore. I want to sell this and I want to exchange into something better. I'd much rather hold a short-term rental lake house in Nashville than a shithole 1-bedroom condo in the hood. So that was an example of exchange. But if you have something now, I love that short-term rental house in Nashville. So every year I sit and I look at my portfolio like, would I rebuy this again? Hell yeah, I would. This is doing great for me. So so in that scenario, as you start to build up equity in that home, you can then borrow against it. So I'm actually borrowing $400,000 right now against that property. And then the beauty is when you borrow, you pay $0 in income tax on that. Yes, you're going to have to pay interest, right? Because you're borrowing money. So naturally you're going to pay interest. But I'm taking out like $300,000 right now. And I don't have to pay $1 of tax on that $300,000 that I'm taking out.
Are you doing like a home equity line of credit or?
Second, just a cash out mortgage. Second. Yeah. So when it's investment property, you usually don't get equity lines of credit are usually like on primary residences. When it's a investment property, you're usually just taking out a second.
I obviously
know
this.
You could either refinance your first and take cash out, or most of us, if we bought a property in 21, you have a really good rate on it, so you want to keep that. So I'm just getting a second, so it doesn't interfere with the rate on my first, pulling out about $300,000. And then here's the beauty: is I get that $300,000 back. I pay zero tax on that. Again, I'm going to pay interest, but now I can take that $300,000. Guess what I can do? Go all the way back around and go buy another property. And $300,000, I could buy even at 20% down. That $300,000. At 20% down, I could buy 5 times that. So I could go buy like $1.5 million worth of property. And then I could go and do the whole depreciation thing and get a massive tax write-off. So I just took $300,000 out tax-free. Then I can take that $300,000, go buy another property or 2 or whatever, another $1.5 million worth of property. And then I can depreciate that and get a few $100,000 worth of write-off. So I took $300,000 out tax-free, but then I got myself probably like a $200,000 or $300,000 write-off at the same time. Like, that's the game. That's what's beautiful about this. And then here's the most beautiful thing is that when I die, which I will, none of us are going to get out of here alive.
That's the most beautiful thing. The end. Thank you for watching. When he dies, no.
When I die, which I will, we all will, none of us are going to leave this place alive. When I die, my kids will get to take over these properties, and they will take over, and all of those taxes that I've depreciated, that I've deferred, all that stuff gets wiped out, and my kids take over all these properties at whatever the value is at date of death. So whatever those properties are worth the day I die, they take over those properties, not at whatever my basis was when I bought them 5, 10, 20, 30 years ago. They're going to take over all those properties at whatever the value is when I die.
So you want to die in a down year.
Theoretically could sell the property as soon as they inherit it and pay no tax because the value of the property is whatever they took it over at. So now your kids could sell your properties if they wanted to. They could sell them. They could hold them. They have options. And in the One Big Beautiful Bill, the current limitation on the gift and estate tax was $13.98 million for individuals and 27.97, some stupid number. Basically, it's $14 million and $28 million for individuals and married. That was set to drop down to $7 million this year, at the end of this year. The One Big Beautiful Bill actually increases that from the current $14 million to $15 million for an individual and $30 million for a married couple. So now you could pass on up to $30 million of property to your kids without them getting hit with gift and estate tax.
And anything over, if this passes, anything over 15 or 30 million.
Then there's other, you got to start figuring out some other strategies there, but you don't need to deploy any special strategies up to those numbers.
See, my strategy would just be to die again. Okay, got it, done. Yeah. Cool.
So just to reiterate, buy,
B.
depreciate, analyze your properties every year, and then either borrow against them or exchange them into better properties, and then you die. That's the strategy. It is the
BDBD.
ultimate hack.
Okay. I love it.
Yeah.
It's a great way to gain wealth with real estate with your knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, look, guys, if you guys are watching this, like, if you want any investment advice, like, please lean on me. I'm obsessed. If you can't tell, I get pretty passionate and pretty excited about this. Like, I'm happy to help you. Also, if you have money sitting in, like, an old 401k or an IRA, like, let's take that money and let's go buy some freaking property with it. Let's play this game. I'd love to help you out. So if you guys ever want any investment advice, I always have opportunities to invest alongside me as well. You can always just DM me on Instagram at Kyle Whissel. I keep it very simple. So if you're ever looking for some investment advice or you have some funds that you need to place, not sure where to place them, I'm happy to give you some advice. I had a buddy of mine, Josh, reach out recently, and he was like, oh, I'm thinking about buying this house. It's so cheap and the rent's so great. And I'm like, I guarantee you it's in a horrible fucking neighborhood and there's no appreciation in that neighborhood. You're going to rent this thing out. People are going to sell drugs from your property or to the people that live in your property, and it's going to be impossible to sell down the road. Like, you don't want to do that. So, like, let me help you avoid making those mistakes, because I've made a lot of those mistakes myself.
Buffalo.
So, yes. And Buffalo's a beautiful city. Inner city Buffalo, not so beautiful. So I can also help because I've learned a lot over these 43 years I've been on this earth.
That's all I got for you.
Awesome.
So yeah. Well,
Cool.
and I'm gonna do
We're gonna do some rapid fire. Before we hit this rapid fire, if you guys got some value out of the show today, again, reach out at Kyle Whissel for any investment questions. And if you enjoyed the show, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the thumbs up button. Let YouTube know you enjoyed it. You can always write some comments about maybe your biggest takeaways in there. If you want more of this content, hit the subscribe button and the little notification bell. And then if you're listening on a podcast platform, make sure you subscribe so whenever we drop new episodes of the show, you get notified. And if you could just spend like 2 minutes, write a quick review. Those reviews, Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, wherever you're listening to the show, those mean a lot to us. So greatly appreciated. All right.
If you need fashion advice, at Bryan Koci, I'll show you all the Amazon places where you can get dope shirts. Okay, I got 2 questions for you.
Yeah.
This is I'll call our rapid, fast, speedy, quick fire questions.
Okay.
Number 1, we got this from our internal notification or internal messaging. One of our agents asked, is permits unknown a huge deal for a first-time home buyer or something they can just go and get permitted if they purchase?
So permits unknown typically is code word for it has no permits. Why do we not just clearly state it done got permits? We say permits unknown. I don't know why that is. Now, I can't answer this question for everybody because this is going to be different in different parts of town. Traditionally, in San Diego County, if you buy a property that has unpermitted space in it, it usually is not going to negatively affect your loan unless it was done in an unworkmanlike manner. I'm doing air quotes for those of you guys that are just listening. If it's done in a workmanlike manner, again, using air quotes, it usually is not going to cause problems for the loan. It may even add some value. It's not going to add the same value as if it was permitted space, but you typically will see an adjustment on an appraisal, adding some value. If maybe they converted a patio to more living space, you'll usually see a positive adjustment on an appraisal, assuming it was done in a workmanlike manner, even if it wasn't permitted. Where you do run into issues, again, specifically here in San Diego, is it most commonly occurs if you get in a fight with a neighbor and you piss your neighbor off. And then they turn you into the city because they know you did unpermitted work. My neighbors and I, in one of my old houses, we got in a fight with each other and they turned me in for something. I turned them in for something. We went through the stupid back and forth. Like, nobody's winning in that scenario. But that's the most common way that you get popped for an unpermitted addition is when, or just, conversion, whatever, anything unpermitted work is usually when you get in a feud with a neighbor and they turn you in, because the city's not going around like walking properties to find this stuff. So it's usually reported by a neighbor.
All right. Well, we're out of time. We'll do the second one on the next podcast.
Okay, well, we'll do the second one in the next podcast. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Again, stay connected with Bryan and I at Kyle Whissel, at Bryan Koci. We'll see you next time.